Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Robert Castro. I'm professor in theater and dance, and I'm currently the director of CLS, the Chicanx and Latinx Studies minor program here on the campus of UC San Diego. We're in the library, the Gildred Hall, in the Latin American Studies building. Really thrilled to be here during Latinx Heritage Month, which is going strong here on campus, and part of the efforts to create awareness for our program, but also to celebrate our extraordinary Latinx community, in this case, our STEM faculty. I'm thrilled to have an informal, intimate conversation with three extraordinary colleagues on campus, and hopefully in the future, dear friends. So, beginning with beautiful Rommie, who's a dear friend and colleague in many capacities here on campus. I'm thrilled to share her bio. Rommie is a distinguished professor in theoretical and computational chemistry at the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry here at UC San Diego. She grew up on the south side of Chicago. Sounds very swanky, or I don't know, maybe the opposite. I don't know Chicago, but Chicago sounds swanky. Received her BS in chemical engineering, her Ph.D. in chemistry from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Rommie was an NIH postdoctoral fellow with Professor Andrew McCammon at UC San Diego from 2005 to 2009, and started her independent lab at the University of California, Irvine in 2009. In 2011, she moved to UC San Diego. She is the recipient of an NIH New Innovator Award, the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers, the ACS Comp OpenEye Outstanding Junior Faculty Award, the ACS Kavli Foundation Emerging Leader in Chemistry, the Corwin Hansch Award, and the 2020 ACM Gordon Bell Special Prize for COVID-19.
Indeed.
Rommie's scientific interests lie at the intersection of computer-aided drug discovery and biophysical simulation. Her scientific vision revolves around expanding the range of complexity of molecular constituents represented in atomic-level molecular dynamics simulations, the development of novel multi-scale methods of elucidating the time-dependent dynamics, and the discovery of novel chemical matter controlling biological functions.
You did great.
That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful, Rommie.
I'm sorry.
I have to say, you know, I know Rommie from, like I said, I'm being committee as part of the service we have to do as professors, and I always thought from afar she was like the coolest person, but now you're like way off the charts with this this incredible bio. Super impressive, but that impressiveness I'm sure was always there from the beginning, Rommie. So maybe just starting at the origins of, just tell us, you know, your story, where you come from, clearly from Chicago, and how you got to UCSD.
Okay. Right, so I grew up in Chicago. We have, my father's side of the family is Cuban, and they were political refugees. Oh. So we have a huge family presence in Miami, as Florida in general. And then they had these, we ended up in Chicago because they had these, I guess, employment programs where they were sending the refugees to different places if they had a sponsor. And so my grandfather ended up working in the steel mills up in Gary, Indiana, which I don't think was very swanky at all, and quite a change from Cuba. But in any case, so that's how my family sort of ended there, and or where we sort of created a home. And my father was a math teacher, a high school math teacher. My mother's an English teacher, or was an English teacher.
Did you have your father as a math teacher in high school?
No, he taught at a different school.
Okay.
Yeah, nearby school, but a different school. Thank goodness. I mean, he made me do math with him. Like, and my sister also. I have one sister, older.
Is she in STEM and a scientist as well?
She does urban planning, which is sort of like. I mean, it's not the sciences, but it's sort of, you know, it gets technical. She does like watershed planning and so forth. Yeah, really important work, especially nowadays.
And where's she based? I'm just curious.
She's with my family in Chicago.
Got it.
So I don't know. This part of, I don't know if it's part also of your story, but certainly part of my story is, you know, sort of, I guess, leaving the family environment, which, you know, I think. For anyone, it's probably challenging. I think for Latin families, maybe I think it's a little harder. I mean,
Absolutely.
especially on the Cuban side, we always talk about like the Cuban guilt. My father's got it. Like, they have to talk to me like every 24 hours, or I start getting, how you doing? Anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I grew up there. I had a love of math that my father sort of instilled in me, which was great. And then I went to the University of Illinois. I thought I was going to be a pre-med doctor, but I thought that I might get a useful degree along the way. Instead of being pre-med, I went into chemical engineering in case I just, because...
That was your backup?
That was the backup. Well, because, it was really important also that we, or at least my family really instilled you have to be self-supporting, and that there was a really good standard of living as an engineer. You could get a pretty good paying job after 4 years. That was really important. So I got that. And I actually went to work for Kraft Foods. I was a really traditional, product engineer making Philadelphia cream cheese at 20,000 pounds an hour. It was really fun.
But what was your practical task? What would you do?
So basically, did you know
Yeah.
that at all of these consumer product companies, consumer products, so or let's just focus on food, any food that you buy that's packaged, there are teams of engineers who are working to make more money for the same product. And so what I did was, which is common, I guess, so there's a couple of ways that you can make money like this. One way is to put more water into a product, because water generally is a cheap ingredient. Another way is to put air into the product, so aerated, that cream cheese that spreads really nicely.
The whipped?
Yeah, the whipped. That was a big money maker. And
but why? Can you explain? That's interesting. But why are they trying to kind of bulk it up? What does that do? Why does that mean more money?
Oh well, they basically can sell less actual cost. They
can stretch their product.
They can stretch the product, and they charge you a little more, so the margins get bigger for their profit. Because of course it's all about making money. Yeah. So the other way that you can, or another way I should say, there's many ways to make money, I guess, but in food engineering, is to reincorporate a waste stream back into the product. So, when you're making cheese, you get curds and whey, Little Miss Muffet on her tuffet.
Sure.
And so the waste stream of cheese making, you make a lot of whey when you make the curd, it comes off. And so actually, because they make so much cheese, Kraft, and other companies too, I'm sure, it costs money to dispose of it. And so what they can do is they can sell some of it maybe to pig farmers or whatever, because they can feed it to livestock. Mm-hmm. But then at some point it becomes a liability. And anyway, so what we were doing was we concentrated some of the whey down and then put it in as a new protein source, because it has a lot of protein. And so we were able to reduce the amount of fat that we had. Fat's very expensive. Anyway, so yeah, that was what I did. And it was actually really fun. What I loved about it was, and one of the things that Kraft has done really well, they have such a diverse group of people from ethnicities, different nationalities. They are so good at diversity for product making, because that's so important to sell to people. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so it was a wonderful environment. But after a couple years, I thought maybe I wanted to do something more than make cheese. And so I went back to grad school, back to the University of Illinois, and I majored in chemistry, which was very different than engineering. Totally different set of questions. I don't think I really appreciated at the time how different it was going to be. Yeah, anyway, but then that was sort of...
And why did you choose chemistry versus the engineering? What was the switch there for you?
Okay, the switch for me actually was, I had a really terrific undergraduate research experience in sort of computational chemistry, close to the field I actually ended up, really loving. And at the time when I was getting my graduate degree, I thought about, should I go to at the time when I was going out on the job market for the chemical engineering, I thought, should I go to grad school, should I not? And, in the end, I decided to take a job, get some money. But anyway, so I had that really good experience. And then after working for a couple years, I thought maybe I want to do something like I had researched. Because I would say that the difference for me was, like when I was an undergrad and I was having this research experience, I really, really liked it. And one of the things that I always say, and I always try to encourage people, like, I knew something was wrong with me when, like, all my friends were getting ready, because I went to a big state school, like, and even though our football team wasn't very good, University of Illinois is pretty much the pits for football, but for a Big Ten school, sorry to say, but like everybody would be like tailgating on Saturday morning, and I was just like so excited that I could go into the lab, like a super nerd. Anyway, so I was able to go back to that in graduate school, yeah. So I love proteins and stuff like that. I love molecules. I'm unapologetically molecular is what I like to say.
That's incredible.
Anyway, we could, yeah.
Well, no, we'll just, a few more seconds with you here before we meet our other guests. So I'm curious, so how did you get to UC San Diego? Because I mean, you had this incredible, going back to school, post-craft, and then kind of building on that. And
have you been to Urbana?
Actually, believe it or not, I have.
Oh, you have?
Yes, believe it or not. When I was out of grad school, usually in the directing programs around the country, when you get your MFA, you usually become, one thing that you kind of get a job is becoming like a guest director at MFA programs. And so I came and I directed a show at the Krannert Center. So I know Champaign-Urbana very well, believe it or not. But we're talking about you.
I know. Well, right. Well, so I will just never. So I had grown up in Chicagoland and gone to school in Urbana for undergrad and grad school, and I worked in Chicago. So I had never been out of this like small corridor in the middle of the country, which I later learned people call the flyover state, to my horror. But anyway, I knew that I wanted to, after my graduate degree, I wanted to do a postdoc, and I wanted to do more in the line of like drug discovery and like health research, because in my grad training, I had done things that were cool, but they were kind of esoteric. They were further away from having like immediate impact, near term. And I thought it would be great to try to see if we could use these techniques, it's like these computer simulation techniques and mathematical modeling, to design safer and more effective drugs. So there's basically I kind of felt like there were 3 places in the country that I should look. One was San Diego, one's the Bay Area, and the other is like the Boston area. Those are the real kind of like biotech hubs in the U.S. I mean, there are other places, but those are where the big concentrations are. And I looked at all those places, and there was someone here who I interviewed with. This is Andy McCammon, who's amazing. And then also just being out here. I mean, I was like, I don't know, I'll never forget because I drove in my car, I'll never forget when, like, I came over the Delmar Heights sort of road, and it was like all of a sudden you could just see the ocean, and it was like, oh, this place is so nice.
Before you go back up the hill to La Jolla, it's an incredible drive,
Like,
so scenically gorgeous, for sure.
And I mean, I definitely did not imagine that we would be able to stay here, but, I feel like super fortunate it has worked out, because I really love the state of California, and I love San Diego, and I think the institution also is awesome, and I'm so happy to, actually for myself even, to learn more about this program, your program, and to build a network and stuff here. So
yeah, and before we move on, because I do have a lot of questions for that I want to have everybody kind of contribute to, but just more specific in terms of the focus of the conversation today with the Latinx Heritage Month, what's it like for you being on campus or just being a Latina in the STEM field, right? In whole, or maybe even just here on the campus? I'm just kind of curious what that was like. I mean, I love your humor and your story and working at craft. This is all fantastic, but you have a singular kind of identity also. You're a Latina, and in the STEM field, a woman, even more so. I'm just kind of curious if you can express your kind of that part of your journey.
Yeah, very interesting. A complete opposite experience in terms of diversity, I hate to say it, at the faculty level. Coming from a place like Craft, which was just so impressive, and then to the department here was a little challenging. And one interesting thing that I realized later that I was doing, which I'm actually just now really getting better at, is letting myself be more of who I am. I think when I came, especially as an assistant professor, there's this sense of, you need to assimilate, as much as possible. And not only culturally the Latin side, but also the gender side. So I, it was just, I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I was doing it, because, I don't know, it's just, you get put into an environment that's just kind of different. But over the years, so I've been here, I guess about 10 years, 12 years. 12 years as a independent faculty member. I'm just now, to be honest, and I just turned 45. I feel like I'm just kind of coming into being able to like be my like true self in department meetings and things like this. And actually, it's wonderful. Things are so much better for that. Anyway, so I don't know. Maybe I didn't really answer your question, but it is interesting. There's many facets of the experience that are interesting, and I think one of the things I've tried to do is when hit with like an obstacle or like hurdle, and certainly there are a lot, to try to do my best to stay positive, because over time it can be difficult, various things, but also to use them as opportunities for growth and making things better, and that's been also, I think, a large part of my identity here as a faculty member, certainly in my department and also like in the division. And so, yeah.
Well, we were talking to you more.
Okay.
But we're going to talk to Gilberto. Is that cool? Yeah. So this is Gilberto. So Gilberto, also another dear friend. I'm really thrilled to be with him. We've been on many committees as well, and so it's great to have him here. So Gilberto was recently appointed the Associate Dean for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in Jacobs School of Engineering. Congratulations. And is a professor in the Department of Structural Engineering since 2012. Born and raised in LA, he received his BS from UC Irvine, his MS from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and Ph.D. from UC Berkeley, all in civil engineering. His research and teaching focus on structural and earthquake engineering design for civil structures. He has contributed toward the development of testing methods for large-scale structural models and the application of earthquake protection systems, including seismic isolation and damping devices in buildings and bridges. He has led teams of investigators in reconnaissance missions following earthquakes to investigate and learn from damage, most recently following the 2017 Puebla Morelos earthquake that affected Mexico City. And it was just recently in Taiwan, this like couple weeks ago, September 17th and 18th, during their earthquakes. Extraordinary. Wow. Gilberto, amazing. I didn't know that about your recent travels. I know you were out of town because you missed some meetings that were on, but I'm like, I didn't know you were there doing like amazing like social action work. Amazing. So just same questions. I'm just kind of asking, we began with Rommie, and I'll just ask you. So, tell us your journey. What were the impulses for you? How does a person from Los Angeles, get to MIT, right? So tell us about your journey and the seeds of your origins of who you are, Gilberto.
So where to start? So yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles, in Wilmington. Those of you who don't know, it's around Long Beach, San Pedro area. And
what high school did you go to?
Benning High School. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so far I met one student here at UCSD from Benning High School. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. It was actually a student in my class. So I grew up from a family of six. Both my parents came from Mexico, both immigrated separately. They met here, married. And
what part of Mexico did they come from?
Michoacán.
Oh,
Tangancícuaro, Michoacán.
Ooh, look at you, going down the fort.
If you know
I love
it. Look up where that is. So they're from a small town in Mexico, and both came. Actually, my dad came on his own. My mom came with my grandparents, where he came to work here in the U.S. And I grew up in this town, predominantly Mexican neighborhood. So there was, I can't say I grew up, even though we're here in the U.S., there was no lack of culture there. Mm-hmm. With a large family, very large extended family in the area. And so my parents did not go to school beyond my father, probably some elementary school, my mom some middle school. And both, were to work or to help around the house, to, fill up those chores. Stopped schooling, but they always instilled a lot of education in us and my siblings. So I have two older sisters that are teachers in I think one elementary, one middle school, and then I have a brother who is a professor of education at UC Santa Cruz, and then it's me, and then I have two younger brothers that are in the Bay Area. One, both actually, one at Berkeley, and actually got involved in the tech industry in different aspects of that. So for my own self, actually my older sister and older brother went to Irvine, and so I kind of followed suit, not knowing, kind of, going back to that, well, if I do engineering, maybe I could get a decent job, make a decent living after. And so I went into...
I don't know, I'm hearing like engineering is like the pathway to something.
Yeah,
I'm missing out.
Standard of living.
Yeah, I guess so.
So
yeah.
one of the things that, one of the things I think that engineering does is, it is, I think even you finish a 4-year degree and you can come out with a very, very good paying job.
Yeah.
You get a master's, even better, right? So it is a good pathway to, and there's plenty of jobs, I think, in
Well, we said a nice way of living, and also just a good quality of life overall.
Yeah, very, very good overall quality of life. And whether it's, you're in the research phase or in the practice phase, a lot of opportunities. I think it opens a lot of pathways, especially, for someone like me that I didn't know many engineers, I didn't know what direction to go in. But I did have when I got to UC Irvine, I had the opportunity to meet and work with a professor who was actually my academic advisor. He was from Mexico, Roberto Villaverde. And I kind of, in meetings, I would ask him, what is this research thing you all talk about? And eventually ended up getting on board doing research with him, and started working on first some programming, and then later on, I was supposed to work with a Ph.D. student who was also working part-time.
So when you were an undergrad?
When I was an undergrad, I started working in the lab. And the Ph.D. student was, for some reason, interested in working more, perhaps because they paid more at the time. And, was kind of fairly absent from the lab. And so I kind of took it upon myself to do a lot of the experimental setup in the lab. And I did actually a model of a building. It was a steel building that I welded myself, because my mom was kind of, getting us, when we were in high school, sending us to adult school to learn welding or to learn some trade. And was able
Is that
to...
true? So
yeah.
you learn, welding.
Yeah, I won't touch it now, but there's been chances in the lab still, but I won't touch it now. But yeah, so I did kind of own little model and was running a little earthquake simulator. There were, little tables like about this size, 2 of them, and running model of a building. And I thought, this is like great. We're like building stuff and breaking stuff. It's fun, like kind of stuff you do as a kid, with little army wars and whatever that I did with my brother. So I just was just fascinated by experimental work, and especially in this area of earthquake engineering. And around that time too, the Northridge earthquake happened. And I remember my advisor, Roberto Villaverde, went and I didn't go at the time, I was an undergrad, but went and saw some of the damage that happened in the Northridge earthquake in 1994. That's probably the last biggest earthquake we had in the U.S. So it's been a while, but could be a little worried. It also makes us a little worried. It's been a while since we had a big earthquake here in the U.S., or a major one that has caused a lot of damage. And so that really got me involved in experimental work, and completing that. And I was kind of on the path I wanted to finish, but that got me excited about going on to learning more about what I was sitting in the lab, trying to explain things. I remember some equations the professor would present to me, and like, some sort of these Greek symbols, what the heck are they? And so I was kind of interested in going on to grad school, and I ended up going to MIT for grad school. And we probably all heard of MIT, and in terms of what it means in terms of engineering education. But for me, it was, I got to meet some great people there. I mean, some brilliant minds. And I think it helped me develop my analytical skills, but I really loved the experimental work. And then so I switched for my PhD. I wanted to continue studying, and I switched back to UC Berkeley, which at the time had the largest earthquake simulator, right? Compared to where you could do models, maybe at third scale models of buildings. And at the time, Berkeley and Urbana-Champaign were the only ones with tables.
Oh, really?
So It's not on campus, but they were the only ones that had these large shake tables.
Interesting.
Yeah, Urbana, if had like the top programs in earthquake engineering were actually Berkeley and Urbana. Wow. Have been like some of the more, like historically, some of the more well-known programs. How earthquake engineering happens in the middle of cornfields.
I know.
It was a safe place. If you did any damage, it wouldn't be so big, right?
So, of course, I've been to Urbana several times.
Really?
It's a very strong group.
So we all know Urbana. Alex, do you know Urbana Champaign?
I know of it.
No, of it. You've flown over it.
Yeah,
As Robbie was saying.
Yeah,
No,
actually, I landed there a couple times.
Can I just ask you a quick question about your time at MIT? Like, what's that like for being like a Mexicano, someone from Los Angeles? Like, I mean, I imagine you identify as Chicano, and what's it like being a Chicano at MIT, for God's sakes?
So, like, getting back to that aspect of I think, growing up in predominantly Mexican neighborhood, all your school is predominantly minority. And then you get to Irvine and you start seeing like, oh, there's only like maybe 10% of us or less in the classrooms. And then you get to MIT. MIT was actually quite diverse. I think MIT did some excellent programs in terms of recruiting. What was different about, and the undergrad population, I think they do a lot. And what was different as a graduate student, and that's, I think, speaking in general, in terms of most universities in the US, that they're very diverse internationally, like students from all over the world. That's because, I don't know if it's US students don't want to just in general go out of grad, especially Ph.D. But it was very diverse in that sense. And you got to meet people from all over the world. Like I said, there were some brilliant individuals, very smart people. It did make me kind of at times like, what am I doing here?
Sure. What about the food?
The food?
I'm always concerned about the food.
About the food in Boston? Well, Boston in general is great.
But did you miss like Mexico? Did they have
Yeah, that was one switch, for example. And when you say, especially like being in Irvine, and when you're in California, you say Latino, it's predominantly a Mexican community.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. When you got to Boston, it was very different. Right. But you get a lot of more
There's
different
a lot
cultures.
Of Brazilian culture there, Cuban culture there,
Puerto
Northeast.
Ricanos, a lot of different cultures. So it was a lot more mixed, and Mexican.
Food was okay.
Yeah, it was okay.
I just have to, this is still a thought really quickly. Do you guys know Professor David Mares? Do you know Professor Mares? A wonderful, I think he's just about to retire, but an incredible OG on faculty here at UC San Diego. Rancilas here in also Law's program. Really quickly, he was like in 1970s, like early 70s, he was like one of the like one or second, third, fourth of like a Chicano at Harvard as an undergrad. Oh, wow. And he talks about him and he found like three other Chicanos on campus, and they were just like, they became buddies, right? Because like they nobody, right, back in those days, right? We're talking like the early 70s, of course, right, with the beginning of the Chicano movement. And he says they would drive like miles to like they found some like senora who made like tacos and like homemade tortillas. They would drive like hours for a tortilla and then go back to school. So I love that you're asking about like that kind of need for us, in our, in where we're studying or where we're at, to have that kind of connection, and food is always like a critical one for us to have, for sure, whether it's tortillas or, plátanos or, ropa vieja, whatever for you, which I love. But I'll just say, and Alex, I'm sure, has his platos as well that he's missing. But I'll just say that's such a beautiful story of how we connect to it, right? That really makes us feel home and makes us like kind of wake up the next day, so to speak.
And they started cooking a little bit more. And for example, one thing that whenever someone would come or we would come, we always took, for example, chorizo, right? That we got here. I have an uncle used to make chorizo in LA, and that was kind of like our kind of breakfast bread and butter. So we would all take like packs of.
So no California breakfast burritos for you, huh?
Yeah,
you got chorizo. You don't got no French fries in your tortilla in your taco.
But at least in Boston there was a lot of different cultures there, and there was a lot of different foods. Sure. And you explore other other restaurants like they had a very well-known Italian section for restaurants, kind of like here as well, and as you get to know in different cities. So it was a lot of good food and a lot of but you do miss a little bit bring my mom over for a week to cook. Sure. Yeah, so there was some of that as well as a student. But Boston is a big city, very, very, very diverse. So.
And the same question I was asking Rommie, like, you know, kind of more focused in terms of your experience and how you are as a kind of Latino in the STEM, you know, and now this new position of leadership, right, in terms of the engineering school. I mean, what's that like for you? And like, I know you guys have Ideas, that wonderful program. I know that Olivia Grave has also run in the past as well. We're going to be meeting her tomorrow. But all to say, I'm just kind of curious, what's your experience like here in that division, that school, and then also on campus?
Yeah, I think overall on campus, you know, it's a great time to be here at UC San Diego as a Latino, as we're, you know, approaching this milestone that we're gonna get to, the HSI status, and we have 25% or more of our undergraduate population, and you know, certainly seeing that in classes at the undergrad level, where, you know, you get to grad school, you see is not so much of a push there. I think in undergrad population we're seeing that increase, but it's not happening at the graduate level. And as Rommie was alluding to, at the professoriate, definitely not seeing that push. And so, you know, we're trying to work towards, you know, keeping that wave going all the way up through the professoriate. So we can have more, you know, when we come in as Latinos to professor, we're not the only ones in our department. So it is an exciting time to be here. I mean, in California, we have, you know, the demographics are changing, and like I said, we're seeing it in the undergrad. So it's a very, very exciting time to be here and trying to work on ways on how we could, you know, make that happen all the way through, from graduate school all the way through getting more faculty and leadership here on campus.
And can you just talk a few minutes about your position as the associate dean of EDI in engineering? What's your biggest challenge, and what are you excited about coming up? Yes, of course, our kind of undergraduate population getting larger, but you're sharing some of the challenges. I'm just curious, like, what is your big charge for you in that division?
Yeah, so this is my first year in this position. I was just appointed, and so there's a lot of aspects, you know, dealing with faculty, staff, and students. And so on the faculty side is hiring, you know, making sure we have an inclusive hiring process, that we make sure that you know, all applications are considered, where we may have tendencies to, I mean, it's something that's in all of us, these implicit biases, you know, to make sure that we're treating each application fairly. So overseeing all the search, faculty search processes that are going on for all throughout engineering, and in an effort to, in the end, have a more diverse faculty. And to have faculty that are you know, serving for the students and the community, that have an interest in you know, not only the research, but also in, you know, in the student population and helping them thrive as students here. So we're trying to build, and it's great to see that. At least for me, it's also exciting to see that as we're hiring a younger generation of faculty, a lot of the new faculty coming in, they have a very deep-seated interest, and you know, it's in being involved in the campus, in supporting students and supporting other faculty. So it's changing. I think the culture is changing all around, and it's very exciting to see that happen. With the students, a lot of challenges there as well. In terms of, you know, making sure that, you know, we get the students into our program all across UCSD and making sure they're able to complete their program successfully. There's in STEM in particular, there's, you know, students, we get a lot of students, and in general, a lot of students don't complete the program. How can we improve those aspects? Considering, you know, when we go back and, you know, I could compare, for example, the high school that I went to and now the high school where my kids go, you know, very different in terms of the level of preparation that students are getting coming into college, and how can we as a university better prepare these students that, for example, do not have access to 10 AP classes, to help them compete and thrive and succeed in this environment.
Awesome. That's so wonderful. I'm going to pause our conversation and bring in Alex and open it up to our final guest, not our least by any means. So Alex, I'm going to read your bio here. Alex Frano is an assistant professor at UC San Diego. He obtained his degree in physics from the National University of Honduras in Tegucigalpa. which is the capital of Honduras, yes? After pursuing a career in music, which I really want to get into and see how that plays out in your current kind of identity, I'm sure that's really extraordinary, in Mexico City and other places, he returned to physics to work on his master's degree at the University of Stuttgart. He did his Ph.D. research at the Max Planck Institute for Solid State Research. He won the Ernst Eckhard Koch Prize and the Springer Outstanding Ph.D. Research Prize. He was later awarded the University of California Presidential Postdoctoral Fellowship to work at UC Berkeley with Emeritus Chancellor Robert Bergenau. Now he is an assistant professor, and he has recently won the Sloan Research Award in 2020, the Cotterill Scholar Award 2021, the NSF Career Award 2022, and is a SIFAR Global Azzarelli Fellow 2022. He's also the Assistant Director of the Energy Frontier Research Center funded by the Department of Energy to study quantum materials for energy-efficient neuromorphic computing, with the goal of developing a new materials platform for a computing paradigm inspired by the brain. His other research interests include strongly correlated electron systems, design and growth of transition metal oxide heterostructures, and various forms of X-ray scattering tools to probe their properties. Wow, that's a mouthful too. Alex, welcome. So again, just to get to meet you. And this isn't the first time I'm meeting in person, right? We've had e-contact, and I've loved your vibe, I have to say, over the emails. You're so wonderful. So I'm really glad to meet you in person. All to say, please share us, how you began your story, your journey, and then of course how you ended up here at UC San Diego. And first of all, I love that you're representing Honduras. Thank you. Latinx Heritage Month, you are showing our Unidos, right? Again, just for those who don't know, the theme of this year's Latinx Heritage Month is Unidos. So I will just say I was actually conscious of bringing in a diverse group of Latinos on our campus just to show the solidarity that we have within our own community. Even though, as Gilberto was saying, we are in San Diego on the border with Mexico, and the primary kind of culture that we have is, the Mexicano Chicanx lens, but we also have extraordinary, brothers and sisters from our other Latinx communities. So welcome.
Thanks, Robert. And yeah, it's wonderful to be here to learn about these efforts and to meet these wonderful colleagues. That's already
As I said, Alex,
incredible.
I was talking outside. My secret plan for this is nothing more than just to for them to know each other. And I'm selfish. I just want to fan over them as well. So it's just about meeting new friends. That's all. Totally an excuse to hang out.
I'm happy with that. Yeah. Yes, and so I am wearing my my country's football or soccer football jersey because of Latin Heritage Month, I suppose. Even though we're not in the World Cup this year, we have to wait 4 years. Sure. I was born and raised in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, the capital of Tegucigalpa, the capital of Honduras. Did my university there, the National University, which is the public university in Honduras. It's a very small country. It's only around 9 million people. If you count the people that live in the U.S., that can grow up to maybe by 3 or 4 million. So it's a sizable amount of our population lives here compared to the country itself. There's a national university, which is a public university, which is public in the sense that it is free. Like you just have to go and sign a form and you are enrolled.
Wow.
And so it is extremely diverse in terms of all the socioeconomic spectrum that you get there. Everybody can go there, and everybody does go there. There are some private universities that are more expensive and obviously more serving the higher economic class, but the public university has the feature that has also a lot of careers. So in Honduras, it is a very poor country. The economy is extremely small, and per capita is just among the most poor countries in the whole world. So its resources are very limited. That is the beginning and the end of this story. Because everybody that is in Honduras that has aspirations to do anything remotely close to what we do in terms of science or art, you have very little opportunity. That to say, there is some of it. There are some people doing it and so on, but very small community. So I was interested in two things, which are exactly the worst things you can be interested in Honduras in terms of opportunity, which is music and science. Again, very limited options for those two.
What would be the opposite of the limited options? What would be the more successful
most people would go.
ways to...
Because there's no real let's say R&D or anything of that nature. So, if you study an engineering career, you're likely to, a good job would be working in the government in some capacity, or maybe in some construction. Civil engineering is strong because there's construction that is around. So you get good jobs as a civil engineer. My dad is actually a civil engineer, even though he didn't work in civil engineering. So you had decent jobs as engineers. So people would do engineering, and then politics is a very common career choice. There's the government is a sizable amount of the population. It's a small country. It's a very big employer, I'd say, and things like that. So law, people study law. That's kind of what you can do there. A few options. You have to run a business, work in a bank, and that's about it. So anything, like what I wanted to aspire to do, it was very limited. So that led me somehow. I dropped out of my let's say bachelor's and moved to Ciudad de Mexico, which at the time was called people referred to it as DF, Distrito Federal, Mexico City. To try and see if I could I had a music group, and we were trying to see if we could get something going there as far as a career, I'd say, or something.
And what type of music did you play?
Like rock and roll, like it was a rock and roll, rock en español.
Rock en español?
Yeah.
What was the name of your band?
We had a few names. We had Azul Revolver, El Sonograma,
Those are cool.
Yeah. We had a bunch of names. We changed names all the time.
And what did you singer? You play? What was your?
No chance.
What did you say, Gilberto?
A demo.
Yeah, go for it.
It's in the vault.
But Alex, are you a singer? Are you a musician?
So I started playing the drums because my father was a just incredible percussionist and taught me at a very early age to play the drums, drum set, the congas, the bongos. We played all the time with him. And so that was my first instrument, and then I learned to play guitar, so I played a little bit of both. So I moved to Mexico City, again, dropped physics. I'll circle back to physics in a moment, but I dropped physics, went to Mexico City and was there 4 years.
And so, what kind of clubs did you play? Did you play
are you familiar with the rock and roll scene in Mexico?
I know some people have. I've spent some time there. People have taken me to some really funky, amazing clubs.
Yeah,
so there's a really
funky.
Cool scene there. I have to say, Mexico City is amazing in so many ways. It has a subculture that you can really reminds me of a lot of New York. It's a liquid city. Yeah. Whatever you're into, you can find it.
Yeah,
right.
With one difference to New York, which is that primarily the population that lives there is Mexicana. So. As a Honduran, I was quickly identified as a foreigner because my accent is very different than until I learned how to,
to be a chilango.
Yeah, it's advantageous when you're in a taxi cab and you want to be chilango so that they don't think that you can be taken advantage of. Anyway, so I was there, and then 4 years, and then one thing led to another, and then at that point, our group decided to try our luck in Los Angeles. And so we went to Los Angeles for another sort of, attempt.
And where did you play? What spaces did you play in Los Angeles?
Small venues. I mean, I think the biggest one was the Viper Room, which is a classic.
That's not so small. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. But other small ones, small.
Wow, Alex, I'm super impressed. Keep going.
And then I know in all these places I had side, musicians don't get paid. That's the number one characteristic of a musician. So you have to have a side gig, and that was another layer of my whole upbringing. Is I worked in restaurants and all kinds of stuff with the whole entire Latino, illegal, undocumented community that is truly undergoing some.
And huge Central American population as well.
This is my people when I was in LA especially, and that was a very let's say, life-shaping experience for me. And my best friends are in that circumstance and or have moved back to their countries. And that, to me, is the most important thing that I, let's say, my intention is to somehow, contribute some solutions to that problem.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And then, if I could, I don't even know how that could look like. And then after
But
being
even just speaking about it and bringing awareness to what you're just sharing is
it's
that's
very
the first,
difficult.
you're
for,
doing it, yeah.
And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So then after LA, because for it's a legal issues, I just had to leave, and I at that point, I had my options were only to leave the U.S. and either go back to Honduras, which is not really a great opportunity, great option. Or go elsewhere. And since I had in the whole interim there, I kind of finished my bachelor's degree, like on the side, if that makes sense. I had a bachelor's degree in physics, and I used that as a mechanism to immigrate to Germany, which is the only place that accepted me. I mean, I tried everywhere in the world, including U.S., which would not accept me because at that time, it's still today, that is very difficult to enroll in a major university without the legal paperwork. So, all of that to say, Germany has realized that, like you said earlier, that or mentioned earlier, international students are very important to them. So they're opening up their programs to international students. And so they have I say this kindly, they have a very low bar for students. They took me. I mean this just sincerely. I had terrible
Alex,
grades.
I just read this most amazing thing about you.
I know.
The bar is pretty high.
And I'm very proud of that because I had very low grades. I came from a university that nobody has ever heard of. I guarantee nobody's ever heard of this university. And my letters of rec were who, right? Didn't publish any papers, didn't have any research experience. I just simply did not exist. If you see my profile, it'd be like, this is nobody. So Germany had a very low standard because indeed they just wanted a lot of students. Yeah. So I ended up in this master's program in Stuttgart. Again, zero idea of what this is. I just threw darts everywhere in the world. One of them called back, the University of Stuttgart. I didn't even know where it is. And they accepted me for a master's program, along with a bunch of other people of, let's say, similar standard places.
Non-traditional journeys.
Yeah. So most people in that context were from the Middle East because of geographically, the equivalent migration pattern in Europe is from the Middle East as it is from Latin America to here, right? So they have a lot of, their diversity means Middle Eastern, right? So bunch of people from Middle Eastern countries that were also, we called us a bunch of rejects. I mean, we were rejected by everyone in the world. Seriously, this is not it's just it was difficult to bet on us because we didn't bet on us. I mean, we didn't know what would happen. I didn't even know what physics was in terms of a career. So I can't blame anyone for not seeing that so early, even I didn't see it. So then I ended up staying there for a Ph.D. and then slowly but surely started to see this is actually something that I can do. And as Gilberto just said, this can open up incredible opportunities. Realizing how much opportunities can be opened up by a degree like this is what changed everything. And then one thing led to another. I was able to come back to the U.S. thanks to, as I mentioned, as you mentioned in that bio, my postdoc mentor was the former chancellor of UC Berkeley at in the time of from the 2002 or 4 to 14, and he was very passionate about this issue, and he was actually very active and even got involved at the sort of Department of State level to get me back in. Wow. And we did it, and I came in, did a postdoc at Berkeley, and then applied to jobs and somehow ended up here.
Wow. What an incredible story. Can I just ask really quickly, I'm just really curious as an artist myself, where is your art? I mean, I always talk about my students to this, I get a lot of students outside of the major when I teach my classes. I get a lot of biochem engineering students, they're taking it for their love of arts. A lot of them are like really grateful for having like one class that they're just really preciously using their imagination and their creative spirit, right, to come alive, so to speak. And so I'm just kind of curious. I always feel that I'm kind of in solidarity with you as scientists. When I do a project, I have a question. I'm searching for something within a play, let's say, right, a project, a theatrical production, and it's an experiment. I don't want to go into fail, but sometimes I get bad reviews, right? It sucks, right? And then I try another, and it is successful. It's like trial and error. I hold hands with you very deeply in terms of like the kind of STEM aspect of how I am as an artist. So I'm just kind of curious. I mean, that's my kind of relationship to it, but I'm interested in you specifically, Alex, your relationship to your music and your percussion specifically, that element of your identity and your experience and your worldview, of how that influences your work and your research.
So definitely music is maybe even the most important thing in my life, even more important than my research, if you will. To me, personally, music has always been this thing I have that I can always have to, I don't know, find healing and whatever.
Are you still part of the band now? Do you still play?
Say again?
Are you part of a group right now? Do you still play?
Just for fun, though. Very, very, very casual, like just get together and play. Very, very casual. And I also go play with like some, like dance things that people organize on the beach, and just very, very casual stuff. Very casual. But it is very important to me, just fundamentally in my personal level. Now, in my latest sort of research adventure that is a very new one, I'm trying to incorporate the notion of computing in the way that our brain works, using that idea to understand how music is understood and appreciated by our brains. So, perhaps in broad sense, I believe that a huge element of our, what we call intelligence, of human intelligence, has a correlation with our ability to react to and understand music. So I'm trying to find a way that we can use materials in electronics to recognize patterns in music.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting at something so fundamental that's really critical to my identity as an artist again, I'm really vibing with you, Alex. An e-version now in person, I love it. But this idea of what you're describing of this kind of energy between feeling, basically, and like how can feeling be an impulse for something, right? And I'm also really struck by what you're saying because it reminds me of there's a saying in the arts that all the arts aspire to music. Music is like the pinnacle of the artistic expression. First of all, it's invisible, it's intangible, and it actually is rooted in feeling. And it actually has vibration. There's a science behind it, right? Comparable to
Absolutely.
what you do. So I can see why even just like brain waves and waves of music and how it's transferred experience, again, is kind of going to, one of my projects as an artist is just, empathy and just like where's the impulse and what's the seeds for that. So I love that what I do and what you guys are doing has that same kind of seed ultimately, but just expressed or researched in a different fashion. But it comes from, not only what you're feeling and what you have an affinity for as a human being, right? I feel like that's really huge. It's something I tell my students, which is, I'm really big on affinities. I'm a big Japanophile. Like, I don't know why I'm a Chicano. I grew up in San Diego, but I'm like obsessed with Japan. Like, I just became really, I've been to Japan. I've studied no theater and world arts and culture as part of my project as an artist and human being. But when I went to Japan, like just something happened to me, and I just felt like I was so connected to it. And I'll just say, we don't know what secret lives are inside us. And so it's thrilling to see like these secret lives inside of you that actually somehow were exposed, and then only to open more secret rooms inside you. And same with Gilberto, and same with Rommie, right? And same with you, Stephanie, too, right? I'm not forgetting you. And Marcy and Matt, for sure. But all to say, yeah, I mean, but for me, that affinity, that kind of clicking or that opening up of that door, that we have these secret lives, that we are mysteries, turn into boons and turn into these joys and turn into those paths that are unexpected and full of depth of feeling. Yeah. Because I'm sure what kind of connects you all three, which I think is so beautiful, is like you just love what you do.
Yeah.
You just love what you do. I mean, and that's so rare. I mean, you guys started, because you wanted to get the thing that gave you quality of life, et cetera, but ultimately you found another kind of door, another affinity that is actually even, beyond, where you originally started, and the love is just, it just feeds it back on itself to you. I mean, we're really lucky. I have to say that's one thing that I'm so thrilled as an educator, right? I feel like my identity here on campus, I came as a citizen, as a Chicano, and as an artist, but then I now have a new identity as an educator, and I feel really committed to actually the invitation to my students to make them think about these affinities that they have and allow for those surprises and allow for mysteries and to amplify their worldview, or as the great David Carrasco, he's a huge hero of mine from divinity school in Harvard, says, your cosmovision, right? And like, what is the center of that, and how does it branch out into aspects of you are, which is ultimately about like how you feel and how you love. I mean, it's so precious. We're so lucky to be at the university, right? Stephanie, yes, you've been here for 5 years with us. I mean, and we get to do what we love. It's so rare.
Yeah,
I mean,
so awesome.
I mean, not to go back to our talking about our families, but that's something I think that's really critical because, I know our families sacrifice a lot, lack of being with them, or just resources, or just that love that we carry, or just tortillas, whatever it is, right? And I just feel like, being part of, on campus as a kind of a Chicano Latinx community member who has a leadership position, as a faculty member, we are kind of in front of classes. We're the brown people in front of other brown kids, showing them that this can happen. You can also follow your dream. Maybe challenging. It may be have its own kind of windy way, but there is a way, and just follow that love and depth of feeling. Just circling back to what you're talking about in terms of the brain, feeling deeply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Note here is that this is important because my file is up for tenure.
Yes.
And my research, the vast bulk of my research is on pretty standard things, not related to music.
Mm-hmm.
So most of what I do is more like what I would call
a standard.
Standard in the field of
standard
in a very
way.
small field. Sure. But to an outsider, you might see the bulk of my research so far has been the type of stuff that is, I guess, standard in this field. Mm-hmm. This idea of incorporating
let me just pause
music.
right there.
Yeah.
Okay, you're using this word standard. Is anything standard? Like, who's those gatekeepers for the standardness? You know what I'm saying? What happens, Alex, if you... okay, I'm going to throw something at you. You're going in for tenure. I know it's a little bit tricky. I've been there before, so I understand. But I'm just thinking, like, why do we have to, like, suppress and be standardized versus actually being exceptional and singular in what we actually bring? I mean, I know it's challenging because... I mean, we're here talking with the world, and I know discussions of faculty is our communities and faculty can be very challenging and very difficult, and so I understand the kind of wanting to be wanting to have a certain perception that we think is going to make us go ahead, but. I would say you are so extraordinary already, Alex. I would just be sign. If I was on your faculty, you have my vote. Same with Gilberto and Rommie. Easy peasy.
That was to get it to the level where you're applying for tenure. You must have already done some extraordinary things.
Yeah.
And if anything, I mean, it's not standard. I mean, maybe it's standard to you because you're in there doing it.
Totally.
Yeah. But to the rest of the world, you're doing something new. And if you got to that level, you already made a huge impact. So, first of all, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
And we wish you luck.
We
wish you luck in the process. But
the date of celebration is next year.
Yeah, on July 1, we'll celebrate.
Exactly. And maybe what after tenure may allow for you is perhaps more risk.
Exactly.
That's
more
the
risk to
Oh, wait,
do
say that again.
So
Say
I
it
wanted
again.
to circle back to a comment.
After tenure, perhaps what Alex may have more opportunities to do more risky things, right? I think we're under a pressured timeline in that tenure.
I mean,
the tenure.
It's so great what you're talking about, Gilberto and everyone here. This idea of experimentation and risk. I mean, it's what we do in our work, but also we show up as human beings, and not to kind of circle back, but just our Latino-ness on campus, right? Like, we're putting ourselves out there, we're doing it, right? In terms of what we're showing our students and in our work and our personal lives. It's really, yeah, keep going, please, Gilberto.
No, I would say I think that gives you that opportunity, and just like for, in terms of, for the students and so forth, that, well, we might be considered successful. And the common thread here is that, I think we all made it through what may seem like we were given some opportunity. And there's something that I was taught myself as like, oh, I was giving, I worked with this professor as an undergrad, and I had this great opportunity to do that. And I think we're all going to be given opportunities throughout our life, but it's a matter of being ready, preparing ourselves for those opportunities. And it takes a lot of hard work, but I think we enjoy the work. So we do the work that it takes, but definitely, to get to this level of being going through tenure, it is a lot of work, but we enjoy what we do. We're willing to do it. And, it's a combination of opportunities and preparing ourselves so that when these opportunities come, we're able to take advantage.
Right. I mean, I was struck by what you said, Rommie, earlier about, finally having your voice after being in the department for 10 years. I mean, that's part of what we're talking about, I think, as well. It's like, okay, puff, puff, I'm official now, right? Now that I have tenure, but what does that mean?
The mask comes off.
The mask comes off, or something occurs, like something magical, you're different, but you're still the same, right? You're just emboldened somehow, or maybe that affinity that I've talked about earlier, another door's open to allow yourself to kind of really use your voice to the fullest. I mean, that's really what. But then even that becomes a risk, right, Gilberto? What you're talking about now, when you get tenure after July 1, then the work really begins, right? Yeah. In a weird way. Yeah.
Enjoy the current phase of assistant professor.
I know there's but on that note, I think that how you take risks and how you there's a balance, and there's a level of practicality that needs to be considered as well, such as funding. We operate research groups that require funding, and that doesn't come easy and has to be very narrow and deliverable. And especially the government funding agencies are very specific in what they want in return. And so you cannot have too much of a incidentally,
you can't go so far outside of the zones.
That's right. And so in this sense is what I consider standard, if I may use that term again, in the terms of, let's put it this way, you look at what the funding agencies are interested in, and you go that route to some degree because you need the funding. Other things, more risky things, are not so easily funded, at least in my experience. I have incidentally started to look into private foundations for more bold ideas like these. No response yet, but that would be the next phase. But the point is, there's a level of practicality that you have to consider when you find the balance between these risks.
And your ability to take them at different stages of your career.
Correct. Also
right?
that, for sure, for sure.
Once you have tenure, then.
Students need to graduate.
Yeah.
You don't want to put a student on a really crazy idea that won't give them any opportunity. I mean, everything, all these things need to be considered.
Sure. This is so wonderful. But I want to open it up to we have our wonderful guest Stephanie here. Please, if you have any questions, join. I feel like we're just here. We need some beer or something, right?
I know.
And we need some of your tío's chorizo tacos. Right? Yeah, Bert, that sounds amazing. But I'll just say, I don't know. Is there anything that you want to share or ask, Stephanie? You're here, please.
I would say thank you to all of you. But I did have a question regarding how you heal yourself from facing the barriers as a Latino in science, because I feel as a grad student, I feel that on a daily basis sometimes, and I wonder as professors if you feel that, and if you do, how you heal that for yourself.
The trauma is real. I think especially, that was one of the things that I don't want to, I want to be real, and I am being real here in German, but I want to keep things sort of positive. I think especially being a female Latina, it's just, it can be difficult, and I think the other thing that surprised me actually was that it gets worse the higher you go. The atmosphere becomes thinner or something. I don't know quite, but anyway, so in terms of healing, I think everybody finds it their own way, probably with your music. I'm not sure.
Enjoy the outdoors, some hiking, some biking.
In nature.
Yeah, being out and taking some time to enjoy nature.
I think it's really important that you do, stay true to yourself, and that you can find these ways of healing. and that you know, with each person being different. I mean, for me, definitely food. You know, I'm constantly coming back to food. That's like just a thing.
Do you
know?
cook?
Oh my God, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I'm a Cuban woman in the end. Yeah.
Okay, so what's like your
We
specialty?
cook. I mean, like anything. I mean, any of the Cuban dishes. I mean, you know, there's.
How are your beans?
So we
We
got
should
we
get
got our
together
next
again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to be hosting that.
Yes, I will happily do that.
So, and how about
Yeah.
you? Do you cook, Gilberto?
Oh yeah.
What do you cook?
Right now, pozole.
Ooh.
Oh, yum.
Yeah, I can't say I'm too extensive, but you know, I've been
You got a
dabbling in the
couple in
kitchen.
your
But
repertoire?
you have a mean
Especially
pozole in your belt.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Alex, how about you? I have to say, I'm not into, I don't know Honduras cuisine, I have to say. What's the
pupusas,
staple?
maybe?
Pupusas.
But there's an argument.
I was thinking it was El Salvador, I always
yeah,
imagine.
It could be both, either of the two.
But so you cook or no?
No, I don't cook. I don't.
Yeah,
but I
this is
enjoy
again the Latin thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean that the women are more generally
Definitely,
in the
definitely.
kitchen. You know, I have also 4 kids, so I cook every night.
No.
You know, yeah, it's crazy, but
Wow.
it's good. But so finding these things, yeah. Also for me, exercise. Yeah, I was also like a competitive runner for a long time, so that was a place where I could always go back and sort of reset.
Yeah.
Or with music. With music.
Uh-huh. I love that. That's a really wonderful
that's a
question.
great question, yeah.
Thank
Other
you for
people
bringing that
might
into
wanna-
the conversation. That's really important. I mean, that really is the thrust of this conversation. Like ultimately, yes, we're all here, and we're here to celebrate and to meet each other. But like, let's get down to it. Like also, you know, how do we have self-care as Latinx, Chicanx, and specifically in STEM, right, which is such an extraordinary and challenging field already in so many ways. How do you really have time, effort, and make space for yourself when we're so in demand, not only as such few Latinx STEM faculty members, we're always burdened already, right? You guys are already burdened. You're always, you know, everybody's wanting you guys for so many things, to be on committees for your points of view. I know Olivia Grave will meet tomorrow. She's like everywhere. You know, we're the ones, right? Because we're so limited in our presence. So thank you for those efforts that you're doing in terms of faculty research, Gilberto. But nonetheless, really, really important to do that for ourselves, whether it's music, pozole, or yeah, exactly, or running. Yeah.
Actually, and I don't know if you all do this, in terms of protecting your time and making sure that you can sort of restore yourself. I mean, I schedule it into my calendar.
Oh.
I do, like whether it's, and my students see it. You know, they see this is her time. She's gonna Pilates or running or whatever.
You got me time.
I do have me time.
Good for you.
I learned that later because
Yeah.
otherwise there's no time for you. You will
Yeah.
be working. You go
Yeah.
home. You keep working. You keep
Yeah,
working till
that's-
you close your laptop, and then you go to bed. You get up. You open it.
That's
I
true.
mean,
That does happen.
Yeah.
I mean, many times in here, you know, in theater and dance, you know, we actually have most of our rehearsals at evening. So we teach all morning. You know,
Oh
I
my
can be
gosh,
here,
and then-
we have rehearsals at night with our productions, and sometimes we can be here till like, you know, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, when I was an assistant professor, Alex, I'll tell you this, you know, I had a little camita in my office, and I would just stay here because I'm like, it's 2 in the morning. I have class at 8. Why am I going to go home? Like, it just like stay.
real?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I have my little camita in there and just like hang out there. So I know the señora who come in the morning, she knows I'm sleeping. No preocupes, está bien. You know, she let me sleep because I'd be on the floor. She'd come back and clean your office later. I'm like, thank you. And then I'd get up. And luckily we have we do have dressing rooms with showers. So I take a shower. So I didn't go to class, you know, dirty. I did take a shower, freshen up, and then go teach a class and start, like you said, start the whole thing all over again. And I had to get off that. You're right.
Yeah, you do.
You have to have that self-care that Stephanie you're talking about.
And you know, I think especially as you know, growing up in the Latino community, where, for example, my parents had more of labor jobs, so they didn't go to the gym,
Yeah.
right? And it
Yeah,
was
they're
not something.
exhausted.
Yeah, it was not something that was present in my culture growing up, and you know, I thought going to the gym was more for an aesthetic thing, right? Because you want to bodybuild or
You want your
wanted
six-pack.
yeah, build a six pack. That, as you can see, I've been working on it. And so one of the things that I learned from seeing, you know, talk about going into, you know, getting to grad school, and you know, as the Latinos get thinner and thinner as you move up, one of the things that I was seeing in some of the senior faculties, they had an exercise routine, right? And a lot of them do that, and so like, oh, well, maybe that's what I should be doing. And you know, it's not something that I grew up with or ever did, but something that I think and I'm not consistent. I have my phases, but something that I think is important to build into your schedule, to do something for yourself, whether it's exercise or take some time for yourself.
That's really great. That's really beautiful. I have so many more questions and so many things I would love to ask you.
Can
Yes,
I add
go,
something
please.
to Stephanie's question, because I think it's a great question and something. So I fully agree with taking care of yourself, your body physically is a huge, very important factor, and also consider the perspective that all these little challenges that you're overcoming make you stronger, make you better, make you uniquely stronger. And this is actually what I, now looking back, even consider an advantage that I had. So many of these hurdles that I learned lessons that nobody knows, that I now actually use in very practical ways. Of course, it's easy to see backwards, right? Because you're like, oh, okay. And it's in the moment, it's hard to have that perspective. But look back in your trajectory. Look at what you have accomplished and notice that there were a lot of struggles that you overcame and they have made you stronger. So we all have that in common, that we can just look back and appreciate that these things give us more value, and therefore that perhaps can give you a bit of patience to okay, it's gonna pass, there will be another one, but I'll be stronger each time.
Thank you, that's great.
I'm just really moved by the conversation today, and really, I just kind of speechless and gobsmacked at how incredible you guys are and how lucky I am to know you. I mean, Rommie, it's so great to know you a bit more. Gilberto, we've been hanging out all these years. It's so wonderful to hear your story, even more beautiful. And then to meet a new dear friend, Alex. I mean, I have so many questions about Honduras. It's a place I don't know, but I'm really interested in it. I'm just really curious about, I talk about right now, I'm just kind of sharing my wish list of our next conversation of, I'm really interested in hearing more about the African diaspora, the Latinx, the Afro-Latino kind of identity in your country. That's something really powerful to me, that I'm trying to have this inclusivity of my identity as a Chicano in terms of radical inclusivity for all and what it means. We come from all over the world and we have these kind of crossroads in the Americas. So I'd love to know more about that maybe next time we talk, for example, but also we can go let's go get some beer and have some good music. I want to know, I want to hear what you're listening to. And Gilberto, I mean, you are right there. I love that you're an experimental researcher. That's part of my project also as an artist. I'm very much into the avant-garde and the more kind of non-traditional ways of making theater and processes, and artists that are kind of on the frontier and on the cusp of form in terms of theater making. So I love that you're right there experimenting, but also just so impressed with your dedication to your humanitarian gesture of going to these other countries in those places in the world, in these crises, and then with a generous open heart, but then learning from those and bringing those kind of that information back to us, so maybe they won't happen again here, for example, or another place in the world. I think that's amazing. I'd love to know about your stories of being in Taiwan and your recent travels. But also, really quickly, are you part of the big California shakeup? Is that something that you're part of here on campus?
No, I'm not involved with that.
Okay.
Which I should be, but
I'm just curious. I see that coming up. So I'm like, oh, that's probably Gilberto's landscape.
Yeah.
And Rommie, your extraordinary work that you do in your lab and with your students, and just reading your bio, I was just like, I know you from being on these committees, and I'm like, oh my God, she's like such a badass. Forgive me again. It's just incredible and then to know that you do these, you have this family and that you cook, and you have like a really deep, important, personal life that's really, really, in tandem with this extraordinary research and profession that you have in the field, which is really incredible. I mean, you're this distinguished professor. I think that's extraordinary to be a woman and a Latina on campus, to have that. It's a very, very, we talk about going for tenure and all these kind of milestones. I mean, that's something to applaud, that you are in our community, that you have that rank and that title, and something that you've earned so extraordinary, I'm sure. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. But with that, I'll just say thank you, Rommie, Gilberto, Alex. Again, as I said, this is just for me a conversation to just hang out, for you guys to know each other. Now we know each other, and we know Stephanie, yes. But I'll to say, Alex, Gilberto, Rommie, thank you so much. So much gratitude and so much admiration for what you do in our community. If I could just ask you one final question, maybe, as we leave in the spirit of Latinx Heritage Month, maybe something you want to inspire us by sharing, maybe what gives you pride in your Latinx community?
You know where I'm going to go.
Ropa vieja? Frijoles?
And Celia Cruz. Yeah.
That's a lot to be thankful and grateful for sure.
Yeah, the love there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely the food is one huge aspect. And here in particular, UCSD, like I mentioned earlier, like seeing our community grow here at UCSD and looking forward to, to being a much larger part of this campus.
And having impact not only on campus, Gilberto, are part of our HSI efforts, but also in the community as well. Yeah, really bridging that gap.
And I'll say, I think we have a lot of ingenuity in our culture. I love it. We're very creative culture, and our family values are such ones that I, not to say that we are all functional families. We have plenty of dysfunction in our families, but I think there's a way that we define our values in a somewhat tighter way that I'm very, very proud of, and I love that.
Awesome, awesome. Maybe Steffi, I'll ask you. How about you? What's something that gives you pride in your Latinx community?
I would say resilience that the people have. Yeah.
Awesome. That's beautiful. So more resilience in the world, everyone. So thank you so much, and to be continued. More Plática tomorrow. Thank you. Woo, bravo.